Hello, second graders. Welcome to day one of our Work of Water Mystery Science unit. There are a few things you are going to need for today for our STEAM activity. You are going to need your Mystery Science Work of Water journal that looks like this. You're going to need your art journal. You're going to need a marker, preferably a thick tipped marker and one in a darker color. So it could be black, it could be a blue or a brown, okay? Any colored marker that's just a little bit darker. And if you have tape, you're going to need some tape and a spray bottle with some water in it. If you do not have a spray bottle with some water in it, that's okay. I am going to be doing this activity with you so that we can see what this is going to look like. But if you do have a spray bottle, then you can do this activity along with me. But let's go ahead and go to our mystery science video and start watching that video. I will give you some time when it's getting time for the project for you to be able to go and get these materials, but I just wanted to show you what we are going to need for this mystery science activity. So let me share my screen and pull up our mystery science video.
Hi, it's Doug. When I was a kid about your age, there was this forest near where I lived. I loved to go exploring in the forest. I'd spend hours out there, and I'd always find interesting things. Like one time, I saw a baby owl up in a tree. Sometimes I would see deer out there. There was always something new to find. One animal I really hoped I would find was a frog. I love frogs. Even to this day, they're one of my favorite animals. My dad knew this about me. And so one day in the spring, my dad said to me, "You know, Doug, it's springtime. Did you know there's a place in the forest where we can find some tadpoles? Baby frogs, like these." My dad said, "Yeah, you could catch a few, raise them here at home in a fish tank, and then release them back into the forest when they grow into frogs." I was so excited. Could we really do that? Where would we find them? So my dad took me on a hike back into the forest, but this time to a part of the forest I hadn't explored yet. I could see that up ahead of us was this water. Maybe it was a pond, maybe it was a lake. I couldn't tell. As we got closer, my dad helped me carefully get close to the edge of the water and dip a little plastic bottle in to try to catch some of the tadpoles in it. But I accidentally dropped the bottle in the water. Oh no. Well, that's okay, I said. I think I can get it back out of the water again using a stick. But as I went to do that, that's when I realized the plastic bottle was moving. In just a few seconds, it had floated a few feet down from me. I had to run after it. Finally, I caught it. But that's when I had noticed for the first time the bottle had moved because the water in this place was moving. I hadn't even noticed that before. I said to my dad, "Dad, why is the water doing that? It's moving." Now, I already knew that in some places the water moves. Like I'd seen waves at the ocean before. Waves are water that rise up, go down, and crash against the shore. But this movement wasn't like waves. Instead, this movement was in a line, moving constantly from one place to another place further down. It wasn't crashing against the shore. It was going from here down this way. It was flowing. My dad smiled and said, "Doug, that's a river. That's what a river does. A river flows." In fact, people love to float down rivers. Sometimes in the summer when it's nice and warm, people will put inflatable tubes in and sit on them and then just float down the river just for fun. I thought about this some and said, wow, so does that mean if you put a boat in there, you wouldn't even have to paddle? My dad explained, that's right, you wouldn't have to. As long as you're okay going the same direction that the river flows, the river will just carry you like a train. That's what rivers do. But why? What makes the water move like this? What causes a river to flow?
Okay, let's think about it. Why do you think a river flows? You can pause this video, think for a second. Why do you think a river flows? Okay.
Why does a river flow? Why does the water move constantly from one place to another? You could probably think of a few different ideas. For example, maybe it's the wind. Like imagine if the wind blew across the surface of the water, pushing it along. That seems like it could explain why the water moves. But if you come back and observe any river day after day, you will find out, even on a calm day with no wind, the river still flows. It flows all the time, constantly. Wind and no wind, day and night, it doesn't matter. Well, could there be something pushing the water? You know, like if you have your hand in the water, you push on it, that makes the water move. So couldn't something be in the river pushing on it to make it flow? But if you go look, there's not anything you'd see in the water. Just looking at the river itself doesn't make it obvious why a river flows. So let's gather more information about rivers. Maybe like if we could look at rivers from above, like with a map. This is North America. Let me show you where some of the rivers are now. Let's compare these rivers with each other and see if rivers have anything in common. We call that looking for patterns. Just to be extra helpful, I've included arrows to show which direction the rivers flow. Have a look and discuss. Do rivers have anything in common which could help you figure out why they flow? Now here's a hint. Take this river, for example. Since rivers flow from one place to another, look at where each river starts and where each river ends. Do all the rivers have anything in common? Can you find any patterns?
Okay, here's a map showing real rivers in North America. Do the starting points of the rivers have anything in common? What about where they end? Okay, let's look at the starting points and where they end. Do they have anything in common? What do you think? Let's find out.
Did you notice the pattern of where the rivers go? Well, let's see. This river right here on the map flows out towards the ocean. So does this one. And this one here, it's the largest river in North America, the Mississippi River. It flows out to this water here, the Gulf of Mexico, which is ocean water. It's salty and is connected to the Atlantic Ocean. And if you keep going and look at all the rivers on the map, you'll see that all major rivers flow towards an ocean. Whoa, think about that. That means that if you took an inner tube and found a big river near you to float down, even if you live nowhere near an ocean, you would eventually get to the ocean. It might take days, but you'd get there. That is so cool. Okay, so rivers end at oceans. But where do rivers start? Did you notice any pattern to where they start? Well, let's look. Here's where one starts, and here, and here. It doesn't seem like there's any pattern. Rivers start all over the map. Hey, but wait a second. This map is flat. You know the real world isn't actually all smooth and flat like this, at least not everywhere. There are some flat, low places on Earth, like this. They're called plains. But there are also high parts, like hills and mountains. So if we create a map that's more like the real world, a map that shows hills and mountains on it, could that help us solve this question of what makes rivers flow? In today's activity, you're going to make a model of some land. A model is a smaller version of a real thing, and it lets you experiment and see what happens with something. Your model will show land that has high places, like mountains, and low places, like plains, just like the real thing. If you look down at land from high above it like this, you can see mountains look like a crumpled piece of paper. And that's what you're going to make your model from, a crumpled piece of paper. Once you've made your paper model of the land, you're going to look at it and think about what would happen if rain were to fall on that land. Where do you think the water would go? Then you'll make it rain on your model using a spray bottle to make a shower. You'll watch what happens when the water falls on your model. Were you right about where the water would go? You'll find out by noticing what the water does. I'll walk you through what to do step by step. If you're in a class, find a partner. You'll work together to make and test a model. If you're working alone, that will work too. When you're done with this step, click the arrow on the right.
Okay, so since we're doing this from home, we are working alone, but don't worry, we can still do this activity on our own.
Cover your workspace with plastic. If you'll be spraying outside, you can skip this step. Get your supplies. Each group needs one set of these things.
Okay, so you are going to need, I'm going to stop sharing my video for just 1 second. So in your Mystery Science Journal, you are going to turn to the first page, and we are actually going to remove this first page from our Mystery Science Journal, okay, so that we don't get the other pages in our Mystery Science Journal wet on accident. Okay, let me try to lower my screen so you can see what I'm doing. So I have my Mystery Science Journal. I am just going to kind of carefully remove the corners that might get a little bit torn, but that's okay. I was just trying to be careful so that I could still keep the cover on my Mystery Science Journal so I don't lose it. Okay, so you're going to need that first page out of your Mystery Science Journal. And the reason why I asked you to get out your art journal is because you need a blank piece of paper from your art journal. For now, you actually only need one. So I'm just going to tear out from the back side of my art journal. So I've got my piece of paper, my worksheet from the Mystery Science Journal. I have a blank piece of paper. Okay. I have my marker that I need. I have tape that I can use. And I have that spray bottle that I'm going to need. Okay, so you can take a moment to go ahead and make sure that you have all of these items here. If you have them, remember, if you do not have a spray bottle or maybe you don't have tape, that is okay. We are going to do this activity together. And we're also going to see this activity being done on the Mystery Science video as well. So you will still get to participate with this activity. Okay, let's go back to our Mystery Science video. And you can go ahead and pause this quickly if you need to continue finding those materials. But if not, go ahead and keep playing through the video.
Write your names on the bottom of the handout.
So make sure you write your name on the bottom of the handout where it says this land belongs to. So I'm going to write Miss Boyd.
Decide with your partner who'll be the fist and who'll be the crumpler. If you're working alone, you can do both jobs. You have 10 seconds to decide who does which job. Ready? Go.
Okay, so you're just going to do this on your own. You do not need a partner for this part of our activity.
Fist. Make a fist.
Okay, we're making
Crumpler.
a fist.
Stack 2 pieces of blank paper on top of each other. This will help you make your paper landscape in the next step.
Okay, so they are using 2 pieces of paper. So let's go ahead and tear one more piece of paper out of your art journal. Okay, and then you're just going to stack them on top of each other. So we can follow along with these instructions, doing it on our own, even though we don't have a partner. So one of our hands is going to make a fist. Sorry, I'm not sure if you can see me very well. Let me tilt that up a little bit higher. One of your hands is going to make a fist while the other one crumples the paper to your fist. Okay, but let's keep watching and following along with our mystery science video. Okay, so you're gonna make a fist and you have your piece of paper.
Crumpler, crunch both pieces of paper over the fist and wrist like this. When that's done, fist, pull your fist out, and crumpler, crumple the paper more.
Okay, so did we see that? So we have our fist and we put the piece of paper on our fist and we are crumpling up the piece of paper. Okay, here, I want to make sure that you can see me. I see myself in this little video, but I'm not sure if it's showing on the recording. So I have my fist and my two pieces of paper and I am crumbling up that paper around my fist. I'm going to take my fist out and then just crumple it up a little bit more. So it's going to look kind of like this. Okay. Now, if you do it too tight, then it might be hard to pull it apart in a little bit. Okay, so you should have your two pieces of paper should look something like this. Let's go back to our video.
Crumpler, uncrumple the paper and line up one of the edges with the black line at the top. Fist, stick it down with two stickers and then do the same to the bottom.
Okay, let's go ahead and do this. Oh, wait. So as we saw from that video, we are pulling apart our piece of paper. This is where we're going to need that tape. So don't squish the paper flat because you want it to be kind of 3D, right? So on your piece of paper from your Mystery Science Journal, you will notice that there are little spaces here that show you on the four corners where to put the tape. Okay, so I am going to tape my piece of paper to my worksheet here. So you can be working on this as well if you are following along with me. Okay, got my piece of paper taped to this, and notice how it is kind of 3D, right? It's sticking off the page. Okay, let's go back to our video.
Bottom. Imagine.
Okay, 1 second. If you need to take a few minutes to go ahead and do this, go ahead and pause this video and finish making your little mountain here, okay?
You're high above the earth looking down. Your crumpled paper is the land below you. Talk with your partner about what your land is like. Can you see any mountains where your land goes up? Do you see any low places between the mountains? How about plains where the land is kind of flat?
Okay, so we're thinking about what our piece of paper looks like. Go ahead and find those spaces where it looks like kind of mountainous, where it's higher up, the places where maybe it's a little bit flat.
In a minute, you're going to make it rain on your model. But before you do, where do you think the rainwater will go? Talk to your partner about what you think will happen.
Okay, what do you think will happen when we spray water on our piece of paper? Where do you think the water will go?
Talk and decide where the highest places on your model are. Look for places where a crinkle or fold in the paper sticks up higher than the rest, like these folds. Fist. Mark these places with thick lines like this. Crumpler, don't worry, you'll get a turn later.
Okay. All right, you should have your marker here, and like the video showed, we're going to find those places on our paper that stick up higher, and we are going to draw lines on those spaces. Okay, so any of those places where the paper sticks up higher, you're going to cover with the marker. Okay, try to make somewhat thick lines. You want the lines to be kind of thick here. Okay, I'm just still looking for any places that have lines that are sticking up. And you should be working on this too if you are following along with your own project. Okay, I think that my lines are pretty thick now. So this is what mine looks like. Yours might look a little bit different. Let's go back to our video.
Crumpler. Use the marker to trace over each line and make it darker. Use a lot of ink. The ink in these lines will color your rainwater so you can see where it flows.
Okay, so double check your lines and make sure they are really thick. So we can see on this piece of paper that they're showing up on the screen how thick their lines are. So just make sure yours are really thick. We want this experiment to work really well. So just make sure you have lots of marker on those places. So I'm just going over mine again, just to make sure that I have lots of thick lines. Okay.
In a minute, you're going to spray your model. But first, put your model on your table with a few other models if you're in a class, so that you can all spray them in the same place.
Okay, we don't need to worry about that, but make sure that if you are doing this project, that you have found a place that it's okay if the area around it gets wet. If you have a towel, like a bath towel, you can lay down underneath your project. Please do that. Make sure to ask a grown-up first before you are spraying water where you are doing this video at, okay? We just don't want to make a mess.
It's time to make it rain. Give your model 5 sprays, no more than 5. Then stop and watch while other people spray theirs. After you wait at least 1 minute, spray it 5 more times. Your model may need a few rain showers before the water starts to flow. By waiting between showers, you give the water time to pick up more ink.
Okay, so you need your spray bottle here. I know that you can't see my face, but I just want to make sure that you can see the project here. Maybe if I turn it this way, I'm trying to see which way you can see the lines better. Okay, so I am going to spray my project here 5 times, like they said. So, oh, hold on. Let's make sure it's working. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, oh, we can already see things happening. So on your project, if you were following along with your own mountain, you might notice that some things have already started happening on your piece of paper, but we're going to give it a minute, and then we might spray again if we need to. So for me, I don't need to spray again, but for you, you might need to spray some more water on yours after we wait a minute.
Discuss.
Okay, so look at yours and see if it needs a little bit more spray. So if you don't see any ink from your marker bleeding onto your piece of paper, then that means that you need to spray some more water, okay? But if you see, like with mine, I'm going to stop sharing the screen here so you can see how it looks like this. Notice how we see all this runoff here. Okay, then we know it's probably pretty good. I might spray a little bit over on this side. Okay. Wow, how neat is this? You can kind of see what it's looking like. All right. So we have some questions to discuss. What happened when it rained on your model? So what happened when it rained on our model, or if you're doing yours on your model? Why do you think the water went where it did? So look at where all of that ink bled on your piece of paper or on mine. Why do you think the water went where it did? And did it make anything that looks like a river? Okay, just in case you are looking at my model to answer these questions, this is what it looks like. Okay. Just going to slowly move it around so you can see all sides of the model here. Okay, so what do we observe? Where did the water go? Do we see anything that looks like a river? Okay, let's go back to our video.
Discuss. Look at this map again. If we put more detail on the map, what do you think you'd find at the start of every river? Where do rivers start? When you're done discussing, advance the slide to watch the final video.
Okay, so where do we think rivers start? Think about the model that we just created, the mountain that we just created. Where do you think that these rivers start? So all of these places here where our river starts, where do you think the rivers start?
Now that you've had a chance to test what happens to water on a crumpled piece of paper, you've seen that water flows from high places to low places. Earlier, we saw from looking at a map that rivers flow out towards the ocean. That's where rivers end. But we couldn't make sense of whether there was any pattern to where rivers start. This map doesn't show any mountains or hills on it though, does it? So what if we label mountains and hills on this map in the places where there's actually mountains? Well, let's do that. In North America, there are mountains here. These are called the Rocky Mountains. And over here, there's more mountains. These are called the Appalachian Mountains. And up here, there's a hilly spot. So look at that. You see all these hills and mountains now? Wow, when you look at that, now all of a sudden, we can see a pattern to where rivers start. You can see that just like in the model you made, real rivers start at high places, like mountains and hills, and they flow downhill from there to low places. The low places on Earth are the oceans. The reason that rivers flow is because water falls on the land, like when it rains. That water flows from high places, like the mountains, downhill to low places, like the oceans. Rivers are just water that's flowing downhill. Where are your nearest rivers? Use a map to figure out where they start and where they go. Figure out if you were to get in a boat or a raft and float down your nearest river, which ocean would you end up at? Let me give you an example. Where I grew up, there wasn't a big river nearby, but there was that small river. Remember where I caught those tadpoles? Now we call a small river a stream or a creek. When I looked at a map, I saw that my stream starts at a hill on one side of town. See, rivers and streams always start in high places. And it flows down, not into the ocean, but into a bigger river called the Fox River. which also flows into another river, a bigger, longer river called the Mississippi River. And if you follow that river all the way down, you see it flows into the ocean. So find out where your nearby stream or river flows. If you live in the United States, there's even a website that you can use to help you figure it out. We've linked to it in the extras. It doesn't show hills or mountains on this map, but at least you can find out which ocean your rivers flow to. Have fun and stay curious.
So I am going to spray some more water on our project just to see those rivers flow even more. Can we see those rivers flowing as I spray? They're going from the higher elevations down to the lower elevations. And even our table is blue, so we can pretend like that's the ocean. So our rivers are going towards the ocean. Okay. Now, for us, the ocean that we have, oh, let me get that a little bit closer. The ocean that we have closest to us is the Pacific Ocean. So most likely, if we were to get on that inner tube and float down the river, eventually we would make it to the Pacific Ocean. All right, thank you for doing this activity with me. If you followed along, awesome. Make sure to throw away your project and be careful not to get ink all over, okay? Because this is pretty messy. So maybe bring the garbage can to where you're at in order to dump this project, okay? And don't forget to clean up your space and make sure you don't leave any water out on the table that you are working on or the space that you are working on, okay? All right, great work, second graders.